My name is Catty, just an ordinary housewife. My husband, Giles, and I both love gardening, and our passion led us to buy a house with a large piece of land for gardening where we live now. I'm into flowers, while Giles is into vegetable gardening. Sharing a common hobby, we respect each other's interests and live happily together. That day, as usual, while Giles was at work, I thought of tending to the flowers and the garden. I had just finished my housework and was stepping out into the yard. Why is there a car parked here? There was an unfamiliar white car parked in the yard. It wasn't our car, and given our large property, maybe someone mistook it for a parking space. I looked for the owner, but no one was in the car or around, so I left a note under the car's wiper. This is private property. Please be careful next time. Then I returned to my gardening. The car was gone by the time Giles returned from work, so I thought someone must have parked by mistake and didn't think much of it. Afterward, however, a few days later, after seeing Giles off to work and finishing my chores around noon, I went outside to tend the garden. Given the nice weather, what is this? I couldn't help but exclaim loudly. There were several cars parked in the yard. Confused, I noticed the white car among them, the same one that had been parked before. This car, it was here before, I thought, puzzled. I looked at the garden and saw tire tracks in G's vegetable patch. Giles would be so disappointed to see this. I cleaned up the mess and tried to fix the garden as best as I could. But who could do this? As I pondered, an unfamiliar man entered the yard. "Excuse me, who are you?" "Who am I?" That should be my line. "Is this your land, and are these your cars?" Yes, but the man looked perplexed. But I was the one truly baffled. "Excuse me, but do you know why there are so many cars here?" "Well, my boss said we could park here." Instructions from the boss. At first, I thought maybe Giles lent the space to a colleague out of kindness. But Giles isn't a boss, and he hadn't mentioned anything to me. It's not like Giles to make a decision without consulting me. So who could it be? Boss? Are you referring to someone from a company? Yes, from the company over there called. He seemed dubious but willingly told me the company name. Apparently, a branch of the company had recently moved into a nearby vacant store, and they had been instructed to park in our garden. Of course, I hadn't heard anything about this, and if Giles had agreed, he would have told me. Feeling bewildered, I pleaded with the man to remove the cars. "Please, this is private property. Could you tell the others to move their cars?" "Well, I'm just a low-level employee." "Can't you talk to my boss?" His indifferent attitude frustrated me. "At least warn them for now. I really don't want to have to call the police." "All right, I'll mention it, but don't blame me if they don't listen." He seemed a bit concerned after hearing police, but still reluctantly nodded and drove away. I hoped this would stop them from parking here, but I was anxious since the man didn't apologize, and I wasn't sure he would really convey the message. With no one else around and fearing confrontation, I stayed indoors, thinking of ways to deter future incidents and nursing a headache. I couldn't bring myself to garden for the rest of the day. After finishing chores in the evening, I was inside when the doorbell suddenly rang. I wasn't expecting visitors and peeked out the window to see a man in a suit. Suspicious, but thinking it might be about the cars, I answered promptly. "Yes, how can I help you?" "Good afternoon, I'm Anders from the company." "Oh, yes, what can I do for you?" "I came about the parking situation. It's inconvenient for us if you move our cars just because it suits you." "Huh?" The man who introduced himself as Anders had a soft demeanor, and I thought he might have come to apologize about the yard. But to my surprise, he started blaming me. I was so shocked by his unexpected words that I raised my voice. This area is designated as a parking lot for our company. We can't have outsiders interfering with our official decisions. Outsiders? This is our private property. You're trespassing. Some people claim to try and charge us a usage fee. His attitude, completely disregarding my claims, made me even angrier. No matter how many times I insisted it was private property, he wouldn't listen. Anyway, your neighbor's property is our parking lot. If you continue to interfere, we'll have to take legal action. With that, he left quickly. I was too stunned to respond, but if anyone should be taking legal action, it should be us. Thinking about it, they would be at a disadvantage if they really pursued legal action in this situation. Realizing his threat was just a bluff, I seethed with anger, determined not to let this go. By the time Giles came home from work, all the cars were gone, but I promptly told him about what had been happening. That evening, today, there were lots of unknown cars parked in our garden. Really? I didn't see any this morning. Yeah, I don't know when they parked, but an employee from the company came in the evening. He said this land is their parking lot and told me not to interfere. What? Don't they know it's private property? I told them, but they wouldn't listen. They said people claim that to charge a parking fee. Our garden was ruined. What should we do? Hearing my story and seeing the state of the garden, Giles was very angry. His carefully tended vegetables had been damaged, which was understandable. However, pursuing legal action would be time-consuming and costly. We couldn't just move the cars ourselves, as that would be illegal. For now, we decided to see what they would do next and placed a sign in the garden asserting it was private property and warning of legal action and a substantial financial claim if trespassed. Giles set up the sign on his day off, but to put it simply, it had no effect. Cars were still parked in the yard, and the sign was moved aside as if it were an annoyance, carelessly thrown away. Some of my carefully tended flowers were trampled, and pots were knocked over. I couldn't properly maintain the garden with the cars in the way, but I tried to clean up. What I could see, employees coming to get their cars would laugh at me from a distance. Lady, this is our parking lot. If you make a garden here, it's a problem for us. Yeah, and about that sign, our boss said it's legally invalid. Better demolish it if you don't want to get sued. Their appalling words stung as they got into their cars and drove off. Despite my warnings, they continued to disregard them, ruining my beloved garden and hurling unjust insults. These days wore heavily on me, and Giles noticed how tired I was becoming. Catty, maybe you should stop going out to the garden for a while. Neither your flowers nor my vegetables will matter until we resolve this situation. I had been visiting the garden daily, concerned about the flowers and G's vegetables, but I nodded tearfully at his words. As just a housewife, I felt powerless and burst into tears. But Giles encouraged me repeatedly. It's okay. You've taken care of the garden. Let me handle it from here. Saying this, he gently stroked my back reassuringly. Trusting G's words, I decided to leave the matter in his hands. As he suggested, I stopped going to the garden and spent my afternoons inside. The sight of the cars parked in the garden, visible from the window, pained me, and the thought of the garden being further destroyed troubled me. But I endured, focusing on resolving this issue. A few days later, the man named Anders from the company came to our house again. Excuse me, I'm from the company. What's with that sign you've put up? What do you mean? What's with it? It's our private property. We're simply asserting our rights. Look, it's already decided by our company. I told you not to interfere, didn't I? His attitude still suggested he felt superior, and honestly, it was a bit overwhelming. I was at a loss for words against someone who wouldn't listen. But fortunately, Giles, who was off work, came out from the back and stepped up to the entrance. "Oh, so you're from the company?" "Yes, I'm Anders." "Are you her husband?" "Your wife is causing us trouble. This could lead to a lawsuit, you know." "A lawsuit? Go ahead, but you'll be at a disadvantage." Anders, who had started blaming me and threatening a lawsuit, was firmly rebutted by Giles. Anders seemed momentarily lost for words, but he maintained his assertive stance. "Our lawyers are excellent. Don't be mistaken, you're going to lose." "Oh, really? Would you care to elaborate on that?" "That's confidential. You should just give up." Anders remained arrogant, showing no signs of backing down. Giles sighed deeply, seemingly fed up. "Then we'll have to sue you. What you're doing is clear trespassing. We'll be claiming damages, proof that this is your land." "I didn't expect someone from your company to be this foolish." "Huh?" Anders, who had been smirking, thinking there was no proof, suddenly looked displeased when his company and he were criticized. He raised his voice and scowled unhappily. "More insults. You should just give up," GES replied to Anders, who seemed to think he had gained an advantage. "Insults? I'm just stating facts. I can't show proof right now, but it's easily obtainable. To not know that is just foolish." Anders was taken aback by GUE's firm stance, still keeping his scowl. GUE continued, "Anders, remember that our company might need your services someday. Your company is a subcontractor for us, right?" "What? Didn't know your company works under mine." Hearing this, Anders turned pale. Indeed, GUE ran a sizable company and had the power to choose contractors. Realizing this, Anders' attitude changed, and he fell silent. "But after this, I might reconsider our contract with your company. The quality of your products has been poor, and I only continue the contract out of respect for the previous CEO." Anders seemed to sense trouble and became more submissive. "I'm sorry. It seems we misunderstood. We'll drop the lawsuit and move the cars right away." "No, it's fine. You must be struggling to find parking." "You can park at our place." GUE's words seemed considerate, but were laced with sarcasm far from his true feelings. The man, realizing the situation, stayed pale and repeatedly apologized, saying words of sorry he had never uttered before. "I cannot let this slide. I'll have all the cars moved immediately, so please don't worry about it. Soon you won't be coming to that company anymore. It's just a matter of patience," GUE said with a cheerful smile, and the man apologized several times before getting into his car and driving away. Then several male employees followed suit, entering the cars lined up in the yard and driving off one by one. It seemed Anders had Hilly given the instruction. Since then, cars stopped parking in our garden, but GUE wasn't planning to let this go. Later, a meeting was held at our house with the president of the company and Anders. "Thank you for coming. I wanted to discuss the trouble we had with your employee, Anders." "I'm so sorry." "We will certainly hold him accountable." The president of the company, being a subcontractor to GUE's company and at risk of losing business, was entirely apologetic and showed no sign of defiance. It turns out the president hadn't been informed about the parking issue. It was Anders' unilateral decision. Now the head of a new branch, Anders, pale as if he might collapse at any moment, apologized repeatedly like the president. "It's unfortunate, but we have to consider the illegal occupation of my land, the destruction of plants and pots, and the threats of a lawsuit. It's difficult to continue relations under these circumstances. I'm truly sorry. We'll definitely hold Anders accountable. Please just don't cancel our contract. It's not just about accountability. Even if it hasn't harmed our company, can you expect us to trust you after such serious criminal behavior?" GUE firmly rejected the repeated apologies, expressing a resolute refusal to forgive. Eventually, it was decided to terminate the contract with the company and settle without a lawsuit, but GUE demanded as much compensation as possible. Anders was, of course, dismissed, and many of his suborns, influenced by him or displaying poor work attitudes, were suspended. The tenant space where the branch had become vacant again, and peace finally returned to our home. Despite losing many valuable things due to this ordeal, GUE and I have started our gardening anew, enjoying our shared hobby together once again.